In this video, you're going to learn how to create a thematic map series using ArcGIS Pro 3.2. Let's first start with a little bit of background information. Let's start with a question of what is a map series. Right? A map series is basically a collection of maps, sometimes called pages or sheets, that cover a geographic area. These are built from a single layout in your ArcGIS Pro project, and each page in the series shows a particular map extent. This allows you to convey detailed layer information for each individual extent while still covering a large geographic area. So the idea here is that you're building up a series of maps. Each map covers one small area of a larger geographic area. And by doing that, you're able to convey very detailed layer information about that one particular extent. And then if you need to look at another area, then you just simply go to the map in the series that details the area that you're interested in. But the idea here is to create a collection of maps that cover a larger geographic area. There are other terms for map series. Sometimes they're called map books or atlases, but in ArcGIS Pro, they are specifically referred to as a map series. In ArcGIS Pro, there are three types of map series. We have spatial map series. With a spatial map series, which is, by the way, the most common type of map series. With these types of map series, the extent for each page is going to be one feature from an index layer. So everything is driven through this concept of an index layer. And an index layer is just a feature class from a geodatabase or a shapefile. And the idea is that every feature in that index layer becomes one map in the series. We also have what are called bookmark map series. These were introduced as of ArcGIS Pro 2.6. With the bookmark map series, each page in your map series is a bookmark that was associated with a particular map. And then the subject of this video, of course, is thematic map series. These were introduced recently with ArcGIS Pro 3.2. With a thematic map series, each page in the map series is going to be one layer from a group layer. So to facilitate the creation of a thematic map series, you have to create a group layer, and then you add multiple layers to the group layer. When you create the map series, what's highlighted on each map is the content from the individual layers. To create a thematic map series in ArcGIS Pro, and again, you have to have version 3.2 to be able to do this, 3.2 and above. So if you have a version that's less than 3.2, you're not going to be able to create a thematic map series. But to create a thematic map series, you first have to add your content. You can see in this example that we have something called California wildfire perimeters. That's the group layer. And inside that group layer, you have individual layers for each year. So for the years 2017 through 2021, each year has its own layer. And we bundle that up into this group layer called California wildfire perimeters. That is what's going to drive this process. So once you've created your map with that group layer, you'll then go to the Insert tab. And this is done, of course, through a layout. So at this point, you need to have a layout that's also been created as part of your project. And then you'll go to the Insert Map Series and select Thematic. So the Thematic Map Series is available starting with ArcGIS Pro 3.2, which I already mentioned. And a thematic map series is simply a collection of pages with each page showing a different layer from a group of layers. As I said before, you do have to have that group layer. There are two types of group layers. We have, and you can see an example of that here, a radio group layer, where each layer has a radio button out to the left-hand side. And you can also have checkbox layers as well. That's the default functionality when you're creating a group layer. But you are going to have a group layer that has radio buttons as opposed to checkboxes. And I'll show you how to do that when I do the demonstration. Layers that are not in the group will still be visible on the pages. So your base map layer, if you've added a base map, and any other operational layers that you may have added to the map, those will still be visible on your pages as well. But for every page in the series, your content is going to be restricted to whatever layer from that group layer is currently being focused on. All right, so when you select Map Series Thematic, you're going to get a Layer Properties dialog box that pops up. Really, the only thing you have to do here is just simply verify that the information is correct. You want to verify that Map Series functionality is enabled, which it should be. Shouldn't have to make any changes to that. And then from there, you're just going to verify the map frame and the radial group layer that you want to use to produce the map series. When you hit OK, the table of contents or your contents pane for your layout is going to change, and it'll automatically select this map series button. And then what you'll see is one map for each of the layers that was in that group layer. And so your output will look similar to what you see here. Now, to save space, I didn't capture, didn't give a screenshot for every single layer here, but you'll get a feeling for kind of how this works. So you'll have a map for California wildfire perimeters for 2021, for 2020, 2019, and of course you also had maps for 2018 and 2017 that were produced as well. But in the interest of saving space, we're just displaying 3 of those here as opposed to all of them. But the whole idea here when you're creating a thematic map series is that the content for each of these individual layers is going to have its own map. And of course, you can also see your base map layer, any other operational layers that may have been added, those will be presented to you as well. All right, so at this point, let's go and do a quick demonstration just to show you the process for how you go about creating these thematic map series. So I'm going to switch over to ArcGIS Pro at this point. Now, to save time, I've already done some of the work. I've already created a project in ArcGIS Pro called Thematic Map Series. Inside that project, I have a map that's been created. You can see that I've changed my base map a little bit. I'm focusing in, or changed my extent to focus in just on the state of California in that map. And I've also got a layout here, just kind of a nearly empty layout. And this is where we're going to add the content for our map series. First thing we have to do, though, is to create our group layer and add the layers that we want to be part of that thematic map series to that group layer. So I'm going to go in my catalog pane. I'm going to switch over to Portal, click on Living Atlas, and I'm going to do a search for California wildfire. And that should present me with a list of layers that I can use. The ones that I'm interested in are the California fire perimeters for 2017 through 2021. So I'll highlight those, and then I'm going to drag them over. So what we're doing here is adding the individual layers to the map. And of course, from that point on, then we'll need to add a group layer that holds those California wildfire perimeters by year. All right, so now my layers have been added to the contents pane for the map. And what I want to do at this point, you can see if you open these up, the symbology for these is all going to be the same, right? So you're going to see other burns, burn areas, prescribed burns, same thing for each of these layers. All right, so the idea here then is that I want to go ahead and produce a group layer. So I'm going to highlight layers that I've just added to my map, and I'll right click and select group. That produces a new group layer, and you can see that the original layers that I've added are now part of the group layer. I'll go ahead and rename this. Just call it California layers. By default, when you create a group layer, each of the layers in the group is going to be of type checkbox. That is not what you want for a thematic map series. So you're going to have to change this from a checkbox to a radial grouping. So to do that, I'll right click on the group layer itself, go to group type, change it to radio. And now what's happened is that each of those layers has a radial button instead of a checkbox. The reason for this, when you add in a radial grouping, only one layer can be visible at any given time. Whereas with a checkbox grouping, it's possible to have as many layers as you want checked on at any given time. But with the thematic map series, since we're iterating through each layer that's in that group layer, we only want one of those layers to be turned on at any given time. So that's why we're changing it to a group layer. Now, the other thing I need to change here is the extent properties for the map itself. So I'm going to go to California wildfire perimeters, right click and select properties, and you'll go to extent. The default is to use the extent of data in all layers, and that includes any base maps that you may have added to your map. So that typically is not going to give you the result that you want, especially if you're using base maps that come from ArcGIS Online. So I'm going to change this to use a custom extent, and I'll click on current visible extent. And what that will do is it will ensure that we always use the current visible extent for every map that gets produced in the series. From there, I'll just hit OK. And then that's really all I have to do with the map itself. So I'm going to switch over to the layout now. On the layout, I've already done a little bit of work here. I've added a little section here for the title, but I will need to add in my map frame. So I'll go to, of course, the Insert tab, go to Map Frame. I'll select Default Extent under California Wildfire Perimeters. And then what I'm going to do is simply draw in my map. It's the placeholder for the map. Release that. All right. So I've drawn in my map. And then at this point, I want to enable the map series. So I'll go to Map Series, select on Thematic. It'll display the Layout Properties dialog box. And again, you shouldn't have to do any work here. It most of the time is going to pick up the correct information. So it'll enable a map series. And all you're doing here is just verifying that you've got the proper map frame and radial group layer, which is California Fire layers. So all you're doing there is just verifying information, you're hitting OK. And now it's created your map series. Now, so each of the maps in the series, if you click through these, it's going to update to give you the information for that particular map in the series. So right now it's displaying California Fire Perimeters for 2020. Change it over to 2017. Right, it displays data for only for 2017. Now, so at this point, and the other thing to point out here is that this little piece of text that I've already added, I did this ahead of time just to save a little bit of time. But this is basically a piece of dynamic text. So on your Insert tab, there's a dynamic text button. And if you click on that, these are pieces of text that have the ability to automatically update themselves. In this example, I went to Map Series and selected Page Name. And then I simply drew in where I wanted the text to go. And what that will do is it will automatically pick up the text for the title of each page. So that's how it knows if you select on a different map to update the text to the current map name. So dynamic text is frequently used when you're creating map series of all types, not just thematic maps. Right? Pretty much any map series that you create, you're probably going to need to add at least one piece of dynamic text that gives you some type of unique identifier for each of those maps. All right, and that's pretty much all there is to the process. Right, at this point, then you're probably going to want to either export or print your set of maps. That can be done through the Share tab. And in this example, we'll just click on Export Layout. We'll just take the default here. Actually, I'm going to change the name. I've created a few different exercises here, so we'll just select Layout 2, hit Export. These can take a little while to produce. You can see that there's an indicator down at the bottom that will tell you where it is in the process. So one of 5 maps so far, 2 of 5. Map series, because you're exporting out a series of maps, sometimes these take a little while to create. So sometimes you just have to be a little bit patient with these. But ultimately what this is going to do is going to produce a PDF file that contains the series of maps. Close to the end here, we're at 4 of 5, 5 of 5. Now it just needs to finish up a little bit. And once it finishes, you can click on View Exported File. And you'll see the output. Right, so there's a map for 2021, 2017. So what you're seeing there is an example of a thematic map series. Now, one thing I did not do that maybe I should have done here is on the map itself, you do have the ability to arrange the layers that are in that table of contents in your group layer. So it might have made sense, just from a logical, linear progression standpoint to change this a little bit to where they're ordered. So now I have 2017 all the way through 2021 at the top in the correct order. And that way, once you produce the exported PDF file, that your maps will be in order by date and by time. So that's something I could have done just to kind of enhance the output a little bit. But that's kind of the process, right? So, just to kind of give you a quick review, right? What we've seen here today is an example of what we call thematic map series, where we're producing one map for each layer in a group layer. These are new in ArcGIS Pro as of version 3.2. So if you want to produce your own set of thematic map series, you'll need to make sure you're running at least version 3.2 of ArcGIS Pro. That's it for now. I appreciate you joining me, and we'll talk to you again soon.